The power of the sun.
In the palm of my hand!
Hello my friends and welcome back to Player Display. This time around we're having a look at the somewhat elusive 2-pack from Amazon that includes Dr. Octopus and Silk from Marvel Legends. They are both very fine figures that we have actually seen before, so they are both re-releases with major or minor tweaks. I think we'll start with Ock just to get him out of the way, because we kind of know what the gambit is with him already. As for Silk, I think she might be retooled from the original. I actually do not have the original versions of each of these figures. Regardless, we'll go through them a little bit quickly because, again, we kind of already know these guys. So I no longer have the box for these guys, but I do have the insert that came on the side because there's some very beautiful artwork. We have Silk at the top looking absolutely radiant, and then we have Doc Ock, a little bit dark and silhouetted, and a little scarred up by my X-Acto knife. I got a little bit rambunctious there. So yes, let's start with Dr. Octopus, who currently does not have his arms. We'll get into those later. This figure is quite controversial, but I feel like he gets a worse rep than he deserves, simply because the base figure is actually pretty great. So let's go ahead and just start with the head, and we've seen this head before. As I've been saying, this has all been reused, but I think the only difference for this particular head is the glasses have been repainted. I think they used to be with a green frame, but I really like this blue that they have. It's a nice contrast to the rest of the green suit. The teeth are really well painted, very well done. Actually, if you peek under, you can make out some actual painted eyes, which is a really nice detail in the figure, even though you can't really see it too well. Part of me kind of wishes that you could remove the glasses, which you can't, they're glued on, so then you can almost have one of his Ock claws picking them up as we saw in the Raimi movies. But then again, this is a comic version of Ock, not a movie version, and I always prefer the comic versions, that's just how I collect. Anyways, going around, very nice hair work as well. We've got kind of a bowl cut thing going on. You got a little bit longer along the top, then on the bottom it gets a little shaven down. It's just really nice and textured, very scrappy looking, and I guess as Aunt May said, all brilliant men are a little messy, so yeah, that fits in with Dr. Octavius here. And since it's not based off of a real person, we don't need to desire a very advanced type of photoreal usage here. And then looking at the body, there's not a whole ton to look at, which I like. I very much enjoy these very classical, instantly recognizable, original comic book looks for these characters, and this does not disappoint. We've seen this body twice before, of course, when Doc Ock was first released, and then we saw it again on Frogman, who I should probably pull out for size comparisons. The torso, not a whole lot to look at. Again, everything is very streamlined, very basic, very cartoony, but you got this really nice yellow, I guess, collar piece going on at the neck. And then the torso is it's just spandex. That's what you get with these very original Marvel designs. On the back, you have the very obvious 4 ports for the tentacles that we will be looking into. They're this I'd prefer a straight silver, but they're a kind of a cool metal blue color, which I kind of like. It kind of reminds me of the NECA RoboCop that we've done some size comparisons with. On the arms, more green, and then you got some more of that stark yellow, which is really cool. I like how it's 2 colors that define the suit. That really brings it back to that retro card wave that we've been getting, even though it's not part of that wave. I also neglected to mention that these figures are also part of that brand new green packaging, which I no longer have, but when I have some new examples come in through Big Bad Toy Store or Amazon, then I'll be sure to look at at least 1 or 2 of those boxes in full as we do an unboxing, just because they're brand new and they're a milestone for both of these lines. Both Marvel Legends and Black Series will be getting the new green packaging. As for the belt, it's actually as least of a techie belt as you could ever want. There's no buttons, no gizmos or anything. It's just a yellow strap. On the legs, more green. On the boots, more yellow. That's it for the figure for the moment. Let's have a look at the accessories, which are minimal, but more than what we got with the original release. Let's get into the accessories that we already had. Of course, those are the ever controversial tentacles, which people seem to have very, no, not varied opinions. Pretty much everybody dislikes what these are. They are all, I think, uniquely shaped. There are usually a pair that sort of resemble each other, but kind of flipped, so you kind of got like a symmetry going on there. And then you've got this other longer, more twisty pair over here, and they're actually very easy to apply to the figure. None of the pegs are in any way keyed. You actually have a little bit of creative license distance when you're plugging them in. So we'll put that guy in there. And then just to change things up, we'll put this one kind of diagonal right in there. Then we got the two shorter ones, and then we'll put them kind of at a diagonal basis over there. Just so that way you don't have the exact same type of tentacle on the same side of the figure, I suppose. This way, it's just a little bit more changed up. And here's one way that you can display him, kind of a little bit twisty, a little bit everywhere, but I honestly don't hate these. I mean, the reason why people dislike them, and I guess the reason why I kind of don't prefer them, is we want bendy tentacles. So naturally, when this figure re-released, we were hoping that maybe they do something a little bit different, maybe a good bendy wire, or have them with very tiny joints, which I think would get a little bit crazy, but yeah, just some alternative to them just being stiff, and at least they can kind of rotate a little bit, so that's kind of nice. But you can't have him doing the classic gestures like reaching right out for one of our heroes. Of course, most importantly, walking on all four claws that we got on the tentacles here. And that's one of the reasons why I wanted to push this review out now, because I want to do the tried and true USB LED laptop lamp mod, which basically you got this really nice bendy cord here, and then what I'm probably going to do, well, I'm definitely going to do it because I have them, is I'm going to replace these tentacles with this bendy wire, which is a very easy mod. There's a whole bunch of tutorials online. I might do it here as well, so keep on a lookout for that. Let's get these tentacles out of the way so we can have a look at our other accessories. Also, another thing I don't like about these is they're very cumbersome. They're not too easy to store, kind of like what these metal LED lamps would be. As for accessories that are actually new to this character, we have an alternate head sculpt, this time with a closed mouth. That looks pretty good. Let me get my hand back there. Yeah, it looks like the exact same head, just with a closed mouth. Not quite as pissy, I suppose. He's a little bit more mellow, maybe mixing up some potions, lamenting Spider-Man, his arch nemesis, and maybe being angry at Norman Osborn at the same time. But you get the exact same repainted glasses, so you got good continuity. And you got these lips, which are well painted, but kind of from a distance, they kind of fade to look like one shape, like right there, so it looks a little bit awkward. You want to switch the heads, it's pretty easy. You kind of just pull up from the chin, that pops right off. Then you can get this head and port it right on with a little bit of pressure, but not too bad. It doesn't feel like you're going to break the joint or anything. And then to take this new one off, it's just as easy. So let's go back to the one with the gridded teeth, which I think is going to be everyone's preference for this figure. But it's still nice to have this extra head sculpt for more displaying options and for different sequences if he's more idle and working in the lab or something like that. Articulation, again, we've seen this before on the previous release and on Frogman, but it's solid. So you go a little bit back. Oops, yeah, that's one of the things. If you try going back, the head pops off, so I recommend taking off the head, moving back the joint, and then porting the head back on, and then you get your back right there. Then you go forward a little, pretty good actually. So if you want to do the arm mod with the bendable tentacles, then you have him up, then you can have him kind of looking down on his foes, being Spider-Man or whoever else you have in the Spider-Verse, Gwen Stacy, Mary Jane, whoever. The shoulders, they're a little bit archaic, but they work for this figure. I mean, he's a little bit on the wider side, so he doesn't need to move too much around. They swivel all the way around. You got up, you got down, you got a swivel at the bicep, you got double jointed elbows, which still have the visible pegs. Again, this is an older body mold. Let's see if we can get both joints to move. That's as far as they go. The upper one doesn't do a whole ton. Moving on to the hands, you got a swivel right there, and then you got hinges out and in for the fists. I also neglected to mention, we'll just cover them very quickly, he also comes with a pair of open hands, and they also hinge in and out. Yeah, we might as well display them really quickly. Yeah, you port the hands out just like any other hands, and then you plug the other ones in. Just as easy as any other figure. They go in really nice, so now you can have his nice gesturing, "I will kill Spider-Man" look. So it's nice to have that as well. As for the abs, or the torso, or whatever you want to say, is, well, I guess this guy kind of lacks abs, doesn't he? He's got a ball joint, he can swivel all the way around. You can go not much up, just a hair, but I kind of like how it's all streamlined, so if you get the entire figure bending that way, then yeah, you can get him a little bit more dangly or exorcist, I suppose. And he gets a very good amount forward. Going on to the legs, got a pretty good calf swivel, And then you got double jointed knees, which I don't suspect would go back. Oh, they actually go back further than I thought. I never had a big deal with these double joints and how they appear when they're bent all the way back, especially here since it's all the same color and it kind of just blends in. So for those of you who care, that's what it looks like. On the boots, there is a swivel just above the boot, and then you've got some rocker right there. You got to work with it a little bit, but you got a fair amount up and a decent amount down. So again, you've seen this guy before, and it's a good body. I really think he's a little bit underappreciated. Again, the body's a little bit dated, but overall he's pretty solid. I should also mention that all of the tentacles do have a ball joint just under the claw, so you can make it swivel, and you can make it tilt a little bit, although not a whole ton. You got something in there. Alright, now let's have a look at Silk, who is a very new character. For those of you who don't know, Silk was bitten by the exact same spider as Peter Parker, and because they were both bitten by the same spider, let's just say their spidey sense tingles a little bit more when they're close together. I actually got this pack because I really just wanted Doc Ock to sort of complete my Sinister Six. But honestly, this figure, very big surprise. I thoroughly enjoy it, especially because she comes with a smorgasbord of accessories, which we'll get into. Looking at the base figure, you've got a very gorgeous portrait right here. Of course, she's got this mask over here. She doesn't have a full face like most of the Spider-Woman or Spider-Men or Spider-Ham tend to have. I wish the mask maybe had a little bit of sculpt work just over the lip there, so maybe it would look more like it's sort of a separate piece that's going over her face, but regardless, it still looks really good. The hair, I really like that it's not just a slate black. There's like these blue accents going on. I'm not sure if her hair is necessarily dyed or if that's kind of just the comic style. And if you don't like the mask, there is an alternate head sculpt that you can use, so you can port that one off. Then you've got this mask brought down piece right here, which I believe goes this way. Yeah, that seems about right. And then you've got an other head right here, which is unmasked, and you can see her face in full, and that looks even better. So we can port that on here. Kind of like the Spider-Gwen that we saw for the Spider-Verse movie, where you have two different heads, and then you've got an extra, I suppose, cowl piece to compensate for a retracted hood or a retracted mask. I really like that feature. I hope they do that with more figures. Like for Spider-Man, they could maybe have him with an unmasked head, and then sort of a dangly removed mask that he could hold in his hand or something like that. We're going to go ahead and keep this head arrangement with the lowered mask and the unmasked head as we look onto the torso for some even more very well done details. I'm actually surprised how well printed this all is. And I say printed because there is no sculpt work going on the torso. There are no recessed or indented or whatever you want to call them webs. They are printed right on. I usually prefer sculpt work, but in this case it looks really good. You see this nice red webbed pattern, and then it all comes down to her unique Silk logo, because I guess technically she's not Spider-Woman, she is Silk. Shoulders, you kind of got almost a Venom looking motif where you've got these arms that are kind of branching off from the central logo, and then you go all the way around to the back. And on the back you don't really have a whole bunch of details, but you do have a little peg hole there if you want to get her up on a figure stand. Arms, it kind of continues with black until it gets to the hands, and then you got some red fingers going on right there, and these are her fisted hands. As for the legs, you see that arachnid motif continue down onto the thighs, and it looks pretty cool. I don't think we've ever seen that design before. I think it's really interesting that we're seeing more Spider-Man characters have black as part of their default outfit without needing a symbiote to change their colors. So, and speaking of that, I hope we get a variant of her in her very first prototypical suit where it was all made out of webs, which is kind of her moniker. She's called Silk because of the way that she spins her webs, which is done in a very unique way that we'll see in some of the accessories just in a few moments here. Going down, you get more of that black spandex, and then you get some white toes, which are pretty nice, looking good. So that's it for Silk, and she is also a very great figure, perhaps in a lot of respects better than Doc Ock, because her accessories aren't things that we've seen before, they in fact upgrade the figure rather than kind of stagnating it. Two open hands. We got a left and a right, of course. Just have a closer look at one of them. They're pretty much identical in sculpt, but naturally there's a lefty and a righty. And then if you have other web accessories from other spider figures, you also have a gripping hand. So that can hold onto that web accessory that we've seen with, I believe, Cyborg Spider-Man and also the newly released Amazing Fantasy one. But by far her best accessory needs to be this web shooting hand. And what I was talking about before with how this character is unique is I think she's the first web slinger we've seen where the webs do not come from a web shooter or the Raimi wrists, but rather straight from her fingertips, which is really cool. So that's kind of why I want to see a figure of that original suit. I could just imagine her, as soon as she's broken free by Peter Parker, she kind of slings that outfit together, and it kind of like has a mummy type of look to it. So that would be really cool to see in plastic form one day. We can go around to the other side and it looks really nice. Of course, we could spend all day plugging in all the hands, but you can kind of expect the running theme here is that the hands are very easy to replace. And this is the most unique one, so we might as well have a look at that. You effectively just need to take the wrist, guide it through the spinny webs going on, port it in, and then there you go. You've got a very nice web shooting effect. I kind of wish we had the same hand to go on the left, but it's alright that we have one extra there. Perhaps on the other side you would like to have a gripping hand, then she could hold another web accessory if you like. It's also worth mentioning that this entire thing is molded in a translucent plastic, so you can actually see that the peg is also translucent, similarly to the webs, and then the hand, the glove rather, is totally painted on, and it's applied very nicely. It doesn't mismatch from the rest of the hands, it doesn't look too faded, it doesn't look too, heavy-handed on the paint. A lot of hand puns going on, I'm sorry. I really like this accessory. This is probably the single most standout piece from this entire pack that we have. As for the articulation department, do you think that's an actual wing within Hasbro Studios? That'd be interesting. Anyways, we've got a very good range of movement in the head. It's a simple ball joint, but actually no matter whether you choose to go with the masked head or the unmasked head with the little scarf down on the bottom, it is totally unhindered because if you move this head downwards, she actually buries her chin right into her own mask, and it goes pretty far back, so if you wanted to have her diving down TASM 2 style, you can absolutely do that. As for the shoulders, they swivel all the way around. They go that much out. Wow, actually very much up. I always feel like I have to turn around the shoulder to get that high, but in this case, no issue is at all. Goes down, got a good swivel, unhindered, and then you got pinless elbows, which are always nice to see. I always love that. And they come up to, wow, all the way. You don't see that too often these days, but you're seeing it a lot more now with these newly engineered joints, which is always a good thing. All the hands have a swivel, and then they also have the out and in articulation. And that's all except for the web shooting hand where there's no joint at all, just goes straight out, which is probably what you want anyways. As for the torso, you got side to side, you got an okay amount in and a good amount back. There's no waist swivel at all, but then you got legs that go this much forward, and they don't go too much back because butt gets in the way, but if you force it to swivel back, then you'll see that it kind of just pushes out to a V shape, which is not a big deal. It still looks good. It allows the form of the sculpt to not be impeded upon, I suppose. You got your thigh swivel right there. You got pinless knees as well, and those completely clamp together, which is great. As for the ankles, they go all the way back, they go all the way forward, and then you got a rocker. So great articulation all the way around. Moving along with size comparisons, we have some more of Spider-Man's Rogues Gallery. We have the retro-carded exclusive to Walmart, I believe, Lizard, who I just got, and he has a custom wired lab coat going with him. We'll review him later on. And then on the left, we have Norman Osborn, or the Green Goblin, who is an excellent figure, except why the heck did they not include him with a stand? That is not smart. Moving things along, we have a few other Marvel Legends size comparisons. On the left here, we have, as I mentioned, Frogman, who I whipped out for this review, and he's one of my personal favorite totally out of left field Marvel Legends, and of course I bring him out because he shares the exact same body as Doc Ock. He's a little bit taller, but that's because he has very unique shoes down there with the springs, so there's your size comparison with them. And then over here on the right, we have Miles Morales with the Hand Ninja hood. I kind of modified him a little bit. And then I have my custom Spider-Man who has the Renew Your Vows body and the Ben Reilly head sculpt, which for me, I always envision Spider-Man when it comes to a cartoon standpoint from the Universal Studios Sinister Syndicate ride, so that's pretty much my go-to Spider-Man. For a few big figs, we have the retro-carded Rhino, and we also have the MCU Venom, which are both great figures that I highly recommend. Now, to put them beside my first favorite Hasbro line, Star Wars The Black Series, we have the Kenobi variant of Darth Vader, and of course, Bad Batch Imperial Crosshair. To put them beside some 7-inch figures, both from different brands, we have McFarlane's Dark Flash, along with NECA's Hellraiser Pinhead. Lastly, we'll have a quick look at some little guys, and I have to apologize for my Omega review from last time around. I spent so much time reviewing her bow that I totally forgot to actually have her holding it in hand, so I compensated that through the thumbnail and the description, but now that you can actually see it in video and me talking about it, she holds that just fine. And also, since she's a short character, I think she might be a very good stand-in for when it comes to size comparisons. And then as per usual, for little critters, we have Ruby, who also came with Omega from before. We have the child, and then we have Muck Muck because, you know,
Muck Muck's pretty awesome.
We finally reached the end of this review, which was an absolute hassle to put together, which for reasons that you will learn about in the blooper reel. But yeah, as for this set, I very highly recommend it. But honestly, it really comes down to two things. Do you already have a Doc Ock, and do you already have the first release of Silk? And I forgot to mention that Silk, the first edition, she had a very much longer hairstyle, so if you prefer that, you might want to go after that one. But for me, I'm pretty cool with this sort of bob that she's got going on. It's a very fantastic set, a lot of new accessories, of course a very brand new spider person for the shelf, and then a very classic villain in case you weren't able to get him the first time around. Another thing to consider is whether or not you're willing to struggle with the very controversial tentacles. Again, I'm fine with them, but I'm also very much looking forward to doing the LED cord mod. And another thing that's worth mentioning is the obtainability of the set, which is not too easy. As I said, it was an Amazon exclusive, and it's still there, but now for whatever reason, it's for scalper price, and then you can only get it for stock price on eBay, and even then, it's not the cheapest. It's basically $40 a pop, so yeah, it's going to put a dent in your wallet, but for the fun factor, and if you're willing to customize Doc Ock, if you've got issues with his tentacles, then yeah, it's all well and good. I mean, they're both excellent figures. It's really just comes to a matter of preference. And I'm sure there are some people out there who haven't vocalized that they perhaps prefer tentacles that are locked into the shape they're in, and that's totally fine. But of course, for me, I really want to see Doc Ock suspended in the air by his 4 tentacles, and then we can see him crawling around, causing mischief. I've also seen a few very precise people manage to articulate each finger of the claws, and then down to the joint of the very ends. So I might do it, and if I do, it's just going to be down here. I think that'll be enough, but that'll allow him to grab things, maybe come out the glasses that are removable, and that will give me a lot more options. At the end of the day, really awesome, fresh figure for me, especially since I'd never owned the original Silk, and never really paid her mind until I actually saw this 2-pack come around. And then also, I got a Sinister Six member that I've always wanted to have, and I look at him as a fun project to look forward to. So thanks again for watching. I hope you guys are liking these videos. My editorial skills are evolving with each entry, so I apologize if they get a little bit choppy or there's background noise or any potential disturbances. I'm doing my best to get these videos nice and clean and up on YouTube just for you, so you can have a little bit of something to watch and chill out and enjoy. And for me, it's just really fun to edit them. I don't know why. I just like cropping out the dead space, yelling at the plumbing upstairs. Yeah, it's just a really fun and enjoyable process for me. Go down in the comments and tell me what you think about this pack. I love it, but of course others might pin it down for being 2 figures that are just being straight up re-released. Then again, I'm not sure if Silk has an all-new body from before or not. And as for Doc Ock, he's ultimately a straight re-release with no new mold or anything like that, except for a new head sculpt and 2 new hands. And then the tentacles, as far far as I know, remain exactly the same. I think the color scheme may be a little bit different, but if you despise these tentacles and you want to hold out for one that perhaps has that heralded bendy wire that we all want, then it's worth waiting for, especially if you're not a customizer. But if you're a customizer like me, then he's one that you could actually come to really enjoy once you put in the effort. Nothing more to say. Again, I hope you enjoyed, and I will see you all later. I should also apologize every here and there for one of these reviews, for many of these reviews already. I might forget a joint, and if that's ever the case, don't worry too much. It usually means that it just wasn't important enough for me to look at. If I forget a joint, then that probably means it's nothing particularly special or particularly challenging. So if I lose one, not a worry on your conscience. It shouldn't be a big deal. By the way, like my new background, I thought that would be a good and more interesting than just a slate white or something like that. We have the child, and then we have Muckbuck, and then we have Muck. And now to put it aside, and now to put them beside my first favorite Hasbro line, Star Wars: The Black Series, very basically colored original comic book looks for these characters. I should apologize in advance. The neighbors have been especially noisy lately. Last night they were flushing their toilet for an hour straight, repeatedly, and I don't know why, and it apparently has continued on into the morning. I don't know if that's a mechanical issue or what, but if that disturbs audio a little bit, we're just going to do our best to meddle through that. And she has a unique logo because she is called Silk, not necessarily Spider-Woman. I'm going to redo that entire portion because I keep flushing the friggin' toilet. And they're a really nice detail. I don't think we've seen that sort of thing before. Neighbors! I apologize because the neighbors have been so rambunctious I had to wait a solid 10 hours to resume this review. Sorry, more plumbing, damn it. I'm going to wait that one out. What are they doing up there? Disposing of a body? That's it for the base figure. Really nice. Let's have a look at articulation now. Actually, no.